Fiza adjusted her scanner's sensitivity for the third time that cycle, watching the endless stream of beings flow through Kepler Station's immigration checkpoint. The Zephyrian trade delegates with their crystalline appendages, a group of methane-breathing Vortakians in their environmental suits, and the usual assortment of merchants, diplomats, and travelers that made the station's port authority one of the busiest in the sector. As a junior immigration officer, she'd processed thousands of identification scans in her 2 years of service. The routine was simple: scan, verify species classification, check travel documents, stamp approval. Nothing had prepared her for what would happen when the human approached her station. "Next," she called out in standard galactic, not looking up from her console as she finished processing a Centaurian silk trader's documents. The being that stepped forward moved with an odd fluidity that immediately caught her attention. Humanoid, but with that peculiar bipedal gait that marked them as one of the newer species to join galactic civilization. She'd only processed a handful of humans before. They were still relatively rare in this sector. "Identification and travel documents, please," Fiza said, extending her scanner toward the human. The being, male she noted from his build, placed his hand on the biometric pad. He was unremarkable in appearance, average height, dark hair, wearing the standard gray jumpsuit of a freighter crew member. Nothing about him suggested he was anything other than another traveling merchant or cargo handler. The scanner hummed as it processed his biological signature, cross-referencing it with the Galactic Citizen database. Fiza was already reaching for her approval stamp when the display flickered and changed. Her breath caught. The screen was cascading with data streams she'd never seen before. Security clearances in languages she didn't recognize, access codes that seemed to shift and change as she watched. And then at the top of the display, a single designation that made her hands tremble. Classification: Founder, Species, 7834, Human. Clearance level: Absolute. "Is there a problem?" the human asked, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. Fiza stared at the screen, then at the human, then back at the screen. Founder. She knew that classification from the Academy, but only in theoretical terms. The Founders were the beings who had established the Galactic Confederation 3,000 years ago. Ancient, powerful entities who had transcended normal spacetime and supposedly guided galactic civilization from beyond. They were myths, legends, certainly not standing in front of her immigration desk wearing a cargo hauler's uniform. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered, unsure of proper protocol. "There seems to be some kind of error with your classification." The human's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes seemed to sharpen. "What does it say?" Fiza's supervisor, Jihan, noticed the delay and approached from his station nearby. The elderly Altarian sensor stalk swiveled toward the display, and all 4 of his eyes widened simultaneously. "Officer Fiza," Jihan said carefully, "please step aside." But Fiza couldn't move. The implications were crashing over her like a tidal wave. If this human was truly classified as a founder, it meant, "You're one of them," she whispered. "You're one of the beings who created the Confederation." The human sighed, a distinctly tired sound. "This is why I usually use the back channels." Jihan had gone completely still, his usually blue-tinted skin now pale silver with shock. "Welcome back, Founder," he said formally, executing the deep bow required by ancient protocols that Fiza had thought were purely ceremonial. "Please don't," the human said. "Just process my transit visa like normal. I'm here on routine business." But word was already spreading through the port. Other officers had noticed the unusual delay, and someone had obviously accessed the classification data. Fiza could see security personnel moving toward their location, not threateningly, but with the urgent purpose that suggested someone very important had just been identified. "Sir," Fiza managed, "if you're truly a founder, why are you traveling on a commercial freighter? Why aren't you, I don't know, manifesting reality or existing in higher dimensions or whatever it is founders do?" The human laughed, and the sound was surprisingly normal. "Because someone has to keep an eye on how things are actually working down here. The view from higher dimensions is terrible for understanding rush hour traffic patterns and immigration processing times." Station Commander Vex arrived, her insectoid form clicking rapidly across the deck. The Qatari officer's compound eyes fixed on the human with what Fiza recognized as barely controlled panic. "Honored Founder," Vex began, If we had known of your arrival, you would have rolled out ceremonies and protocols and wasted everyone's time, the human interrupted gently. I'm not here for fanfare, Commander. I'm here to observe. Your people are doing fine work. He turned back to Fiza, whose scanner was still displaying the impossible classification. Though I have to ask, how long have immigration delays been averaging at this checkpoint? About 15 minutes during peak hours, Fiza admitted. The human nodded thoughtfully. And how many staff do you have scheduled during those periods? We're usually short-staffed, Jihan interjected. Budget constraints. The human tapped something on his wrist device and Fiza's console chimed with an incoming message. I've just authorized a budget increase for this station's staffing levels. Should help with the congestion. Commander Vex made a choking sound. You can just do that. Founder-level clearance has its perks, the human said with a slight smile. Though I mostly use it for fixing bureaucratic inefficiencies. Much more satisfying than cosmic oversight. He picked up his processed documents from Fiza's desk. Thank you for your service, Officer Fiza. Both of you are exactly the kind of people we hoped would be running things when we set this all up. As he turned to leave, Fiza found her voice again. Wait, what's it like? Being one of the founders? Creating all of this? The human paused and looked back at her. Honestly, mostly it's like being a parent. You set up the basic structure, teach what you can, and then you hope your kids make better decisions than you did. Sometimes you have to step in when they're about to burn the house down, but mostly, he gestured around the bustling starport, mostly you just watch them build something better than you ever imagined. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving Fiza staring at her scanner's display as it slowly reset to normal operations mode. But for the rest of her shift, every routine ID check felt a little different. Every approved transit, every welcome traveler, every small act of galactic cooperation felt like part of something larger. Something that had started with beings who cared enough about the future to stick around and make sure the immigration lines ran on time.